you've all heard of this book. I mean, it's been out forever and ever, and I read it many years ago, but I thought of it because it's called The Four Agreements, right? By Don Miguel Ruiz. And, you know, the four agreements are: don't take anything personal, be impeccable with your word,
never make assumptions,
always do your best, and don't make assumptions. But I was saving that one for last, because this is what I was still trying to get my head around. Because here I am meditating for 15 years thinking I've got this whole thing solved. No, I never do. But I am thinking like, okay, after meditating for this long, I should have more insight about why we, us, human beings, always go to the self-rejection definition of assumptions. When we assume, well, you've heard the saying, you make an ass out of you and me. But I think it goes deeper than that, because I find it really interesting in assumptions. Part of what I'm trying to get my head around is, and why I was bringing up the meditating thing, is because when I am in meditation, when any of us are in the scientific flow of something, we transcend the linear left brain garbage, the conditioned dialogue of our brains, and we're on some other sort of jet stream. I call it being plugged into this creative matrix. And you're disconnected from that virtual grid of this left brain that is really tied to your negative programming. And so I find it so interesting when something occurs that doesn't maybe line up the way you want it to line up, you immediately assume the worst. This happens all the time with acting, right? So you go into an audition and then you don't hear anything and you automatically assume you were the worst actor ever, or you had the worst audition, or they hated you, or your agent's going to fire you, or they're never going to bring you back, or you messed up one line and that's all you remember. And I think it's so fascinating why, I mean, I get it, but I still find it also, but why? So our assumptions are always negative interpretations. We never assume the positive, ever. If anybody in here assumes the positive, I think you're Gandhi and you don't need to be here. Because it's not the truth. We almost always assume the negative. Why? Because that negative part is the conditioned part that we've been living with for a long time that gets triggered by its default automatically. And then I thought, well, it also confirms our own rejecting of self. It confirms you're not worthy, you're not good enough, you're not talented, you're not dateable, you're not lovable, you can't aspire to have something more. And so then you get caught in that brain drain train, and yes, that's the challenge about assumptions. I say here that when we assume, we're seeing it from a prism, only one half of a prism. Oh, the prism. The prism. So it's interesting. I'm going to use Robin because she had an audition this weekend, and it was. But I can use any actor or anybody about anything. You're dating somebody and they don't call you. What do? You assume dum dum dum, right? See, everybody laughs because it's true. But I think it's fascinating because you are only seeing yourself from your own subjective prism. If you tell somebody else the story of what you experienced, even subjectively, they see it from a whole prism. So if I talk to Robin, or I can talk to anybody, and they're like, well, I'm not going to get that job, and then I ask why, I don't see the person having the kind of experience they relayed to me. Do you get what I'm saying? Nor does anybody out in the world who is watching you. They just don't. You're only interpreting stuff from your own subjective slice. And it's not that it's not a correct slice or a correct prism. It's just woefully aligned with negative programming. So yeah, there may be a scintilla of truth in it. Yeah, maybe that the girl is never going to call you because she doesn't like you. And you know what? That's okay too, because it's not personal. It has nothing to do with you. She may like blondes, or he may like, oh, she could be a lesbian. I mean, that could be the other thing. She's not going to call you, Matt, because she likes girls, right? So anyway.
That's okay.
So, all right, so let me just pull this last part together, you guys, is I think it's also a distinction of assumptions, is a distinction of not fully being in the moment. I get it. This is what the being on the hamster wheel of the noise in our brains does to us, and we project into the future. We project meaning into not hearing something. We project meaning into your girlfriend doesn't text you. We project meaning into your agent says we got feedback, we'll call you later, and you immediately assume it's terrible. We project into the future our own interpretation based on our negative conditioning of the doom and gloom scenario. We catastrophize. So I don't have the answer for it except recognition and recovery, trying to breathe and slow down and coming back to just the factual stuff you have in front of you. And also, if you can, being just a bit gentler with yourself and not seeing it only through that prism. The best thing you can do if you can't get out of your own stuff is call your friend up. Give them as much information as you can, and I bet you 100% they will give you a completely equally valid interpretation of the same events. Get what I'm saying? That's a really holographic prism. That's how you need to be operating more in your life. It's not easy. That takes mindfulness.